Hey everybody, this is Donovan Bankhead with Springfield Music, Ernie Williamson Music, and Fazio's Music, and I want to welcome you to the Mo Better Bands podcast and YouTube video. So on Mo Better Bands, we're basically talking to educators, both local and abroad, about topics that affect you and that will help you build a better and stronger band program and a program that has more of an impact on your students' lives. If there are topics that you'd like to hear, if there are guests that you'd like to hear, if you'd like to be a guest, please reach out to me. Donovan at springfieldmusic.com, Donovan at springfieldmusic.com, and I'd love to hear from you. All right, let's get to today's show.
Well, today on the Mo Better Bands podcast, I'm really excited to talk with my friends Christian and Tyler. They're over at Seneca schools, Seneca bands from Seneca, Missouri, over in the southwest part of the state. And we've known each other for a little while. We play in the Four State Winds together and some other stuff. Tyler and I go way back. Tyler's taught at the store in Joplin, and so we go way back. And I'm excited to get to talk about recruiting with you guys today. So welcome to the Mo Better Bands podcast, first of all.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So for anyone who doesn't know these two, Christian's is on the right in the blue shirt, Tyler's on the left. So just in case, because there may be people that are outside of Southwest Missouri watching. So in a normal year, tell me how you guys have traditionally do your recruiting, and then also tell me kind of how you had to modify that for the past year or whatever.
Yeah. Do you mean like specific levels or overall with all our different levels?
Yeah, and maybe that's a neat question, Christian. So let's think. Give me sort of your general thoughts on recruiting, kind of like the big picture view, and then maybe kind of dial me into some of the specifics that you do. What's your philosophy of recruiting, if you have one?
Ooh, I don't know. I don't know that I've really ever thought about a philosophy of recruiting other than get as many kids to be in band as possible.
I love that philosophy.
That's philosophy. I mean, we start in sixth grade here. So in a normal year, we would try to get as many fifth graders interested as humanly possible. And then every year after that, we do everything we can to try to hype up the upcoming year for them, whether it's sixth grade going to seventh grade or seventh into eighth or eighth up to the high school, and keeping them in the high school once we're there. But some of the big things that we do really for the beginners, I guess, would be we try to go and perform for them when we can. It's obviously been harder in the last year to do that. Mm-hmm. But like if we can get jazz band to perform for the fifth graders, we've toyed. We haven't had a chance to do it yet, but we've toyed with the idea of bringing like the high school marching band to perform for them at some point. What we've always done is we have towards the end of the year, the sixth graders who are currently in band that the fifth graders all know will go and perform a couple songs for them. We'll get like a select group, maybe five to eight sixth graders. So every instrument is
represented.
Every instrument's represented there, and they get just a little taste of it. But they get to see their friends doing it, people that they know who are their age, and then at some point, it depends on the year, but sometime in April or May, we'll usually have actually you guys, some help from Springfield Music, Ernie Williamson Music, come and test the kids on instruments and find out what they might be naturally strong at, and then we'll send home a big parent letter and see if we can get them to commit to band and go from there. That's really kind of our big thing. What we're still working on is getting all those sixth graders, because that's pretty successful getting the fifth graders into sixth grade. Where we struggle is getting the sixth graders to stay into seventh grade, because in our district, they're in an intermediate school in fourth, fifth, and sixth. And so they go to the junior high in seventh grade. And with going to the junior high, they have a lot more electives they can choose from. And so we always lose a bunch there once they have other options. And so that's our big drop. And if you have secrets for us to try to get those kids to stay in band, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
But we play for them. Just like we do the fifth graders some, and we try to hype them up as much as we can, talk about junior high band and how it's different. We don't take them anywhere in sixth grade to compete. We do a couple concerts here in town, But in 7th grade, we take them to contests in the spring. We do solo and ensemble with them. They audition for honor band. So we tell them about all those opportunities, and that interests quite a few of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely have some questions or some thoughts, and
Sure.
all of my ideas on it have been stolen from every good band
Right.
program that does it, because I don't know. I only see what other people do. And honestly, Christian, I love that you even just said that, because so many people, especially in a situation like this, it can be hard to be vulnerable and say, gosh, I'm having an issue with this. I need some ideas or some help. And I'm sure there's people listening to the episode today that are like, I have something I do that might help. And so, anyone that should reach out to you directly and offer that help. There's also a way they can even call in. You look through their the liner notes or the podcast show notes. There's a link you can click and even call in and leave up to a 1-minute message. So if someone has under 1 minute suggestion, they can do it that way, and then I'll include it in a future episode. Yeah. I know one of the things. Do you guys do anything? So we're talking about retention here right now, which is recruitment and retention. Those are two things they go hand in hand, obviously. What kind of events do you have? What kind of things do you have planned for those students as they advance? What's the thing that's designed to kind of make them want to stick with it, that they don't quit? Do you do any of those kind of things? Do you do trips so that they have an idea of like, oh man, like I heard in the interview I did with Sal and Jen from Carthage, this was so genius, man. If you guys take anything away from this episode today, take this, remember this, write it down and don't forget it. But for his recruiting this year, because he couldn't do like all the play testing and all that kind of stuff, he asked kids, he's like, how many of you have ever been to the beach? And only a handful of kids raised their hands. And he's like, how many of you would like to go to the beach with all of your friends without your parents? And everyone's like, go, and he's like, join band and you will do it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that is genius, because I grew up and started band in rural Oklahoma and had never been to the beach, never thought I'd be able to ever go to the beach. And of course, in high school band, got to go to the beach and go to the ocean, and that for me, I remember thinking, standing there in March in Florida on the Atlantic side of the ocean, up and around the Orlando area where the water was still cold. And I was in the ocean up to my knees thinking, I may never get to do this again. And here I am. Like, I just was so blown. I just felt like my whole life had brought me to that moment, and seeing the majesty of the ocean, and just like, it just was so rewarding for me. So do you guys do anything? Doesn't have to be an ocean trip or whatever, but do you do anything that's like a reward for like, hey, if you do it, we do this trip. Like, we're on the first manned space flight to Mars, whatever it is that you guys do as reward as they progress.
Yeah, we do that some. We do at the high school. We do a big trip every 4 years, and this last one we did go to the beach. I love the way he worded that, though, with like asking, hey, do you want to go to the beach? Do you want to go with all your friends? Like, yeah, definitely. I hadn't thought of phrasing it that way. So
me neither.
I will use that this year. We'll see how it goes. I suspect it will do well. But we do a big one with the high school every 4 years. And so we tell them that and kind of talk about where we've gone. And we did go to Florida this last time. So we talked about going to Disney World and spending a day at the beach, and that helps for sure. In junior high, we do something different every year, but we do usually go on some sort of spring trip. It's usually just for a day, but we might go to a theme park or some festival. But in doing so, we'll make a full day and an event out of it. Even if we just go to a festival a couple hours away, we'll get a meal or two. We'll do some shopping, take them to a park or something. Like we always try to do something fun towards the end of the year. So we do some of that and use that as motivation. And then I kind of on a different note, I thought of this while we were talking about that. We also use Scott Lang's materials and his website, Be a Part of the Music. There's so many tools on there that we've used, and I've had varying levels of success. I wouldn't say our community is super tech savvy. So I don't know that a lot of those materials have really been used to their full extent with us, or at least utilized to their full extent. But we have used that as well, and he's got videos galore on why you should be in band and all the research based stuff, and then just fun ways to hype kids up on there as well.
Yeah, that's really good. I think trying to think of all those different ways that you can reach and motivate and inspire those kids, and there won't be one single way that does it, but it's the culmination of them all. I think kind of works. All of it's a funnel. We're trying to get as many kids in that funnel as we can, and we're trying to keep them in as much as we can. And I think having those various things that you do, whether it's some promotional material, I think some things talking about like the value of music, the benefits of education of music and what it does for your brain and stuff like that is fun. And then I think sometimes just bribing them with fun, that's absolutely good. Some combination of those things is good, because kids often don't, the intrinsic value of playing isn't enough of a motivator to them. That's something that they're going to learn and appreciate the more they do it. And the more they become skilled and accomplished in it. But it's not something that they can really appreciate, I think, when they're young, like middle school aged or whatever. I think until they maybe start participating in like honor bands or district bands. Our son is in 7th grade and he plays tuba. And which I was totally opposed to him playing tuba originally, because I was like, man, can't make the tall big kid play tuba just because he's a tall big kid. Like that's not cool. And then he did his play testing and he had a 2-octave range on tuba, and I'm like, we got ourselves a tuba player. All right, so no, we feel pretty. Belinda especially needed a tuba player because he's in her band, so she's really excited about that. And honestly, almost his entire life to this point, he's been pretty like blasé about music. Doesn't really care much about it. Didn't even necessarily want to do band. He had mentioned that to us when he was in 5th grade, that he wasn't sure if he wanted to do band. And Belinda and I were just like, you are so funny. Your parents own a music store. You're going to do band, So anyway, so he's doing band whether he wanted to or not. Like he knew this kid had jokes. And but as he made the honor band this year, and he got 2nd chair as a 7th grader. And like you were mentioning when we first kind of got connected, and I was just checking in to see how you're doing, he's in that same situation a lot of your students were in. Like he started beginning band, left for spring break, never came back in the fall to some hybrid, a couple days in, 3 days out, and then came back where they were doing 4 days in and 1 day out. And I think starting next week, they go back to 5 days in. So even though he's been in band for like a year and a half, technically, not really, he's got less than a year. So anyway, the point being is that as he beat out these other kids, and as a 7th grader got 2nd chair, all of a sudden he's like, oh, like, well, hey, this is kind of fun. Like his ego starts to kind of pop up of like, I might be kind of good at this, because I think before he just thought that we were just, telling him that just so that, because like, my mom always told me that like God broke the mold when he made me, and of course I always thought like he did it because he was like, yeah, that was a bad design, like to never make any more of that one again. break this mold so we can't make another one. But kids, when their parents praise them, kids just think it's just because it's mom and dad. And then when they get external praise, so once your students get to the point where they get that external praise or that external validation, I think that could be reward, but that can take a long time, and not every kid's going to get that. So finding those other things to do, like what Sal had mentioned at Carthage about, mentioning the other thing, the beach vacations or pizza parties or whatever. And the other thing that Sal did that I thought was really smart was he just told them about the beach and all the fun stuff. Didn't tell them about all the hard work and the practice and everything else. He told them that the next day after they'd all signed up. So they all signed up and they come in. He's like, all right, so remember me telling you all this stuff? Like, I 100% guarantee you we're going to do all the things that we told you that we're going to do. Here's what you have to do. And I thought that was so smart, because I often hear directors do them at the same time. Mm-hmm. We'll do this, that, and the other, but you've got to eat right, exercise, discipline, blah, blah, practice, blah, 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 eat spinach and lima beans. And that sort of takes the fun out of it. But instead, he gets them all hyped up on the fun. And the next day, he's like, all right, here's your part, which I thought was really savvy. So I think in the middle school, if you could do trips, pizza parties, any of the kind of stuff the middle school kids like to kind of get them to stay in it, I think that helps, But anyone else who's listening, I encourage them to reach out to us and give us their tips on how they handle retention. So on your recruiting, when you're we talked. Let's go back to that. So we were talking about that we do play testing. How did you guys handle that this past year where we couldn't do play testing?
We didn't do play testing. We were, and it was a mess. I wouldn't choose to do it ever again. But we were given the contact information for all the kids that were in 5th grade going on to 6th grade, and we called all of them and asked them if they wanted to be in band. And we tried to sell the band program to them over the phone, and or really to the parents over the phone, and it was not super successful, as you can imagine. Like, hey, you want to ask your kid if they want to do this thing that maybe costs some money, and when there's an option that doesn't. No, I don't think Jimmy wants to do that.
And I think that's part of the big problem is with that form of recruiting is on the 30 or so kids that I called, I think I talked to maybe 2 kids on the phone. Mm-hmm. Like their parent was like, here, this is one of the band directors in Seneca. Like, they're wanting to know about band next year or something. Why don't you talk to them? Like, I think I talked to maybe 2 kids. And like recruitment, when we're recruiting for band, we're not just recruiting the kids, we're also recruiting the parents with them. And I think that's important to remember. Is like, we're not just recruiting the kid that comes to school, but the parent as well has to also be involved and be like, they have to be on our side with with most of the things that we're trying to push at their kid and get them to practice and do all this stuff. So like, we're not just recruiting the band kids, but we're also recruiting their parents to be along that journey and along on that ride with us as well.
And that's where I think a lot of that Scott Lang material can come in really handy. Mm-hmm. But I think we have to get the kid first, because if we get the kid first, the kid can put leverage on the parent to get them on board. Yeah. Charlie Mangini shared something. Charlie Mangini shared something about he would have high school kids call those 5th grade kids and encourage them to be in band. So it wasn't like the directors doing it, but it was older students doing it. And so they would call the home or call the parents' number and say, hey, this is so-and-so. I'm in the Seneca High School band. And I wanted to know if your son, John, was around, and I wanted to talk to him about the benefits of joining the band. And if the parent was like, well, yeah, I mean, this is my cell phone, he's not here, then they'd say, oh, well, if it's possible, I'd let him call him back. And then they had a little script that they could even tell the parent, just a couple sentences about it. And then because of that connection, where it was like a student calling, they felt like that was pretty effective. Of course, the nice thing for you guys is all you're doing is, setting up an evening where they're making those calls.
Right.
You're probably ordering some pizzas and sodas, and you're just walking around and like cheering them on and not actually having to do it. And if you had 10 kids help you do this, and I thought that was a cool idea, but I think it's a cool idea to do with something, you're doing all these other things, but also do this to get that in there. So.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. We're doing something like that this year. And I can't take any credit for it. Scott Lang had suggested it several weeks ago, but we put some kids in charge of recruiting for this year, and we kind of let them loose with it. And they've formed a committee, and they have I don't know if he's a president or a czar or what his title is, but they have someone's in charge of it. And he has a small council that works with him, and then like half the band wanted to help in this effort in some way. So they split them into smaller groups to focus on retention from grade to grade. And there's one group that's focusing on just specifically recruiting the new kids from 5th to 6th. And I don't know if they're going to call them or not, but they've already talked to the principal at the intermediate school about having some sort of COVID-friendly ice cream social type of event, and just talking to the kids very informally about band, and maybe playing for them some. And I don't know what else they're going to do, but I know they have a bunch of other ideas they're waiting to tell us. So
Yeah.
So fingers are crossed. I think they've got some good ideas, and this year could be a really good year for that, but we don't know what they're going to do just yet.
Yeah.
I think that's part of that's exciting because some of the kids have like come in after their little like group meetings, their little committee meetings, and be like, we've thought of this, like, what do you think of this? And like some of the ideas that they've brought to us after their little meetings, like, hadn't even thought of it. I didn't even think about going over and doing an ice cream social with the incoming fifth graders, just informally, just like sponsored by the band. So they're putting ice cream and band together. I like ice cream. I might like band. Maybe these two things together can be something that I can get behind. So like some of the ideas that they brought to us have been really like exciting for what they could potentially work out of that.
I love that idea. Oh my gosh. Like anyone who's listening, if they're taking notes, they should write that down. That's so good. Cause you're right. Like that, having that older student be the recruiter, I just think is so influential.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I signed up for band just because I always thought an instrument was interesting. And I was in a small school, and I think they presented it to the entire grade. I think we all signed up for it. Or at least it felt like it. I don't even remember ever choosing band. It was in band.
It was a thing.
And so I did that. But certainly if an older student would have talked to me about it, man, that would have been super powerful for me, because you know, younger kids look up to those older kids. And of course, me growing up in the 80s, I had seen all these 80s movies about high school, and I was always terrified of what I thought high school might be like. That like, man, I'm going to get like swirlies every day and probably get beat up. And like, I don't know, all those 80s teen movies just made it seem like it was really dangerous, you know? And so if I would have had the chance to like make a connection with someone who's older and done it, that would have been very motivating and inspiring for me. I think that's a really, really great idea. You probably definitely want to have them run their ideas by you, though, just to make sure that you're comfortable with how they're presenting everything and stuff like that. But David Barani, in the interview I did with him, and he's at Perryville, he had mentioned how he gets his high school students involved to help recruit. And one of the things that he tells them, he says, look, this is your community. You live here. This is where you went to school. Like, you're going to want to see this program continue to thrive so that it can be a source of pride for you as you grow up and mature. And whether you stay in this community and, you know, continue to see the band, or if you just come back and visit, you're going to want to see that the program is continuing to grow and feel like, hey, I helped with that. And so he uses that to kind of encourage them to give back. And so he uses them to do like the instrument demos and do things kind of like what you guys are talking about doing events with the younger students and stuff like that. So I think sometimes that's a good way too. I think a lot of times our high school kids are happy to help. I mean, gosh, think about all the stuff they do for you that's not as fun. You know, those grueling summer rehearsals and stuff like that. They'll do all that, telling them like, hey, eat some ice cream and talk about why you love band. Like, shoot, yeah, I'll do that.
Right.
That's great. So since we're not doing play testing last year, we didn't do it last year. I'm assuming students did they just like give you their top 3 instrument choices and you did some kind of instrument demo for them and then they picked. Have you noticed any change in terms of like, was that just as effective as play testing in terms of success on the instrument? Was it worse? Was it better?
Really, there's not a huge difference for us that I'm noticing. We have more percussionists than I'd like, because everyone wants to play percussion, but not a lot more, because I was still selective. I still I steered some away from that a little bit that I thought would succeed on something else. And if they were interested in something else, I tried to push the other instrument just a little more. But otherwise, like we usually have, well, a usual class of beginners, we'd have about 60 to 70. This year we only have 26. So like our numbers are way down, But usually at the beginning of the year, there'll be anywhere from 5 to 10 who want to switch instruments in the first 2 weeks of school. They'll try one that they thought they wanted, that they thought they were going to love, and then they'll switch. And we actually had no kids do that this year. So I was kind of surprised by that. That worked out really well. But we let the kids choose for the most part and just tried to guide them a little bit. And they've stuck with what they chose, and they've been passionate about it. So it's worked out really well, actually.
So I've asked this a question a bunch, and everyone's had that same response.
Yeah.
Which has really made me think about how we can do this thing different in lieu of play testing. Because if play testing isn't helping, I think it's helping on the recruiting end, because you've got some other people there to talk about how fun band is.
Yeah.
I think we could do something else that would do the same thing. But in my mind, there's downsides to play testing. If I'm play testing trumpets and can't get a kid to intentionally buzz two separate pitches, two different partials, then I generally don't recommend them for trumpet. But I only have a couple of minutes with them, tops, usually. Right. There's no time for instruction. There's really no time to even talk about much of what to do with their lips. I just see if they happen to get lucky the first time they put it up in their face. I give them a couple of really simple instructions. I give them a sound to model with my lip, just so you're going to go like that into the mouthpiece. And the ones who can pick that up the first time, I recommend them. Those who don't, can't. Same thing with flute. Someone gets a tone on the flute right of the way, they're generally recommended for it. If they don't, they're not. But that doesn't mean anything. And I wonder how many kids, I often see kids who can't get a sound on the trumpet right away. And after a couple of attempts, they're like, I can't do this. I can't do this. Well, of course you could. I couldn't get a sound on the trumpet right away either. Maybe I can't do it. Maybe I should have played something else. I'm too stubborn to ever think about having played something else. But so I think there's downsides to play testing. I'm more concerned lately about the downsides to it than the benefits. I know that it's serving a recruiting role. I wonder if there's a better way that we can still serve that recruiting role without starting to plant some of those negative seeds in a kid's mind of, I can't do this, or this is going to be really hard, or I just don't know I don't love that idea that we're kind of setting that off in the beginning. As musicians, they've got a lifetime of fear and self-doubt in front of them. I don't know that we need to put it into them in the very beginning,
Right.
Maybe that's just my neuroses. Tyler's sat next to me enough in 4-state wins to watch me and fracked enough A's above the staff to know that clearly this is in my head now. So any ideas of what we could do? Because if the play testing is not any more effective in terms of actually determining success, what's something we could do in lieu of that? The ice cream social is a great one. Is there something, what other things do you think we could do in lieu of the play testing where we're getting that one-on-one, hyped up experience about band? Could we do more of the demonstration and the petting zoo type thing without them necessarily, I think Tim Carth was saying that he'll let kids come and if he needs trombones, for example, he'll have the high school students play, but then the student will move the slide, and the student, the fifth grader, will be like, "Oh, that's cool," and which I thought was pretty clever. And so he has the experienced person doing the hard part, the buzzing or whatever, and then the kids pushing the buttons or whatever, so that they're getting a feeling of success from day one. I wonder if more of that might be more useful than us testing them.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I like that petting zoo idea a lot. I know I've heard of a handful of people doing something very similar to that. I think that would be very helpful.
Maybe just making that day less of a test and more of hey, come hear about bands. Come let us talk to you about band. Maybe make it eventually when we get back to full school assemblies and stuff, hey, we're going to draw one kid out of here that's going to come down and try and play a trumpet in front of y'all. Turn it into some sort of game show kind of thing where there's more, it's not a test, because tests have this, students hear the word test and they're like, oh no, I didn't study it. What am I supposed to do for this? They freak out when they hear that word. So turning it less into a test
Yeah.
Like a game to them. I mean, sixth graders.
Yeah, you're right.
They like games. Like
test has like no positive connotations,
no,
right?
No.
Like you got a math test, you have a blood test, you have a test for osteoporosis. Like these are all things that we're not excited about, you know? So I think, I think there could be some really good takeaways from that. Because if we're not getting the benefit of play testing, I know we're getting the benefit of the one-on-one interaction.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I get in front of a kid and can talk to them about band and how excited I am, and I can be encouraging to them personally, one-to-one, I know that's effective. But on the other hand, I also sometimes see in the same time that kid who's, disappointed because he couldn't get a sound or whatever. So
turn them away immediately.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to win them over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And kind of like we were having that conversation about what Sal does, I don't want them to think about all the challenges of band yet. Like they've got the rest of their life to figure out that this trumpet is the coil of torture. Like they don't need to know that now, And so like, let's just wait on that. Like, let's make it positive and fun from the get-go, and they'll figure the rest of it out as we go along, So that's cool. I think that could be really neat. All right. So we had a down year for recruiting our beginners, which happens. A lot of schools have reported that same thing, except for Carthage. Carthage got like 97% of the kids that they normally would get with that whole pizza party at the beach. Freaking genius, man. Oh, just like hook them in. Like all those kids are just going for that. But most of the other schools that we work with are in the same boat that you guys are in. Their beginning program this year was half. And so any plans of how you're going to make up those numbers, because that's going to filter through to your high school. Mm-hmm. So what's your plan for recovery?
Well, we kind of sat down about October and we're like, hey, we need to figure something out, because we're going to have 2 years where we're down. Like by 2 years from now, 3 years from now, our high school is going to be about 30 kids less, just for the fact that we don't have the numbers at 7th grade or at 6th grade like we normally do. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we came up with is I have a free spot in my daily schedule, teaching schedule, that we okayed it with our principals already at the junior high, and we're gonna start like a beginning band class at the junior high next year, where our the incoming 6th graders that weren't in band last year, or this year I should say, mm-hmm. that are going to be 7th graders next year, can come join. And next year, and then like this year's 7th graders that either didn't do band because they didn't want to or didn't think they could, because we had a lot of that at the beginning of this year too, because we didn't get to recruit for the 7th graders mm-hmm. like we normally would. So we lost some numbers in our 7th grade band as well. So we're going to give those kids a chance to come back to band and use those kids that potentially may already know how to play the instrument. Even if they've forgotten everything, they'll remember a little bit. But we could use them as guinea pigs and helpers in that beginning 7th grade or beginning junior high band class that we're going to do. So that's kind of how we're going to attack that and see how that works out. So
awesome. That's good. I think that's probably the best way to do it, I think, is to just offer another one of those classes. Mm-hmm. I know in Shawnee, Kansas, they're actually doing 3 beginning bands because they didn't start a band at all this year. Oh. No beginners this year. And so to make up for that next year, they're doing a 5th grade, 6th grade, and 7th grade beginning band. So I'm glad. My main thing is just I hope everyone's doing something. Yeah. Because if they're just thinking, and if anyone's out there that's not, if they're just thinking like, well, just unfortunate, I'm just going to ride this out. Like, don't ride it out. Like, find a way to offer another beginning class or something, because it's going to filter through to the high school. And because we can't keep every kid, man, if it's just going to have really, really negative effects. Plus, I mean, I know it's preaching to the choir here, but band is awesome for students. Like it's to have that support group and that network of kids doing it and the skills that you learn from doing it is so impactful. We missed out on getting a lot of kids into it this year. Yeah, we need to make that up. So I think it's really important. I love that you're getting to do that, Tyler. That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
great.
that was a big push for us. Like, hey, we need to do something. Like, is this okay if we like? Can we do this? And our principal was 100% supportive of that idea,
Awesome.
wanting to keep it, and because he knew it too. And from his perspective, he just sees a bunch of kids that weren't in band and a bunch of other electives that are now going to be overrun with kids. From his perspective,
Sure.
he's like, yeah, let's try and spread that out as much as possible so that we don't have like a ton of kids in one class and bands sitting over here, and they're like, well, we can take some kids if we want. Like, so trying to spread the wealth a little bit throughout some of those classes for those 7th graders that they can take.
Yeah, it turns out we're the only teachers that want the biggest class sizes.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Everybody else wants them smaller. We just want them to grow.
Right.
That's right. I was going to say that every band director I know is like, I'll take them all. Give me all the kids.
Yeah.
I'll take them all. It's part of what makes you guys so great, man. It's like that's without a doubt. And a kid's got to really do something to make it where a director's going to be like, I don't want that kid though.
Yeah.
That kid's got to go. Oh my gosh. This is awesome, guys. There's some really, really great content here that I think that's going to be really useful. Was there anything that you wanted to share? Was there anything we didn't cover? Any ideas or thoughts or questions or whatever that you wanted to kind of to get out there?
I mean, one of the things we do at the end of the school year, or we're not really sure how we're going to make it work yet, but at the end of the year concert, we put our 6th grade band, our junior high band, and our high school band all together, and we perform a piece. And our high, by the time those kids get to high school and they're seniors, they're like, we have to do this again. But those 5th graders are like, wait, we get to play with the high school band and the junior high band, like a mega band, like, and they really get behind that. They really get behind that. So
that's really cool. That might be a little tricky to do this year, but not impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thankfully, we perform in a gym.
Right.
So we've got the whole gym floor to spread out. So
You got the fine arts gymnasium that you can put them all into.
Get out
That's
a
right.
drum major podium to conduct from or something.
Right.
And just going with the idea of having both of us conduct drum major style, like spread out and everything. So we're going to make it work one way or another.
I love it. So when they perform together, are they mixed in together, or are they set up as 3 separate bands playing together?
Well, normally they're mixed together. We might have to have them still separated this year with COVID, but normally the idea is to get them mingled as much as we can.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that idea. Man, if you could have a 6th and 7th grader sitting next to a freshman or a sophomore, like, yeah, I think that's such a smart idea.
We also have all of our bands perform at that, our jazz bands, our concert bands, and all that. So those 6th graders, because we encourage, we do with the 6th grade band performs first, and then the last thing of the concert is the mega band that we do. So those 6th graders, they have to sit there and watch the rest of the concert. So they get to see that, oh, jazz band, that could be something cool that I like. And you have to be in band to do jazz band. So it's one of those things like, you may not get them excited for something, like it could be 2 years from now that they'll be like, they want to get to that point so that they could be in jazz band. But we have a junior high jazz band too. So like those kids that are like, oh, I've never seen that instrument. I play clarinet. Like, is a saxophone close to like, could I play saxophone in jazz band, but still play clarinet in concert band? Yes, you can. That's like, I'm glad you asked, like things like that. So the kids aren't just seeing themselves in the 6th grade band room and performing themselves. They're seeing everybody perform that we have in the district.
That's such a great idea, because a lot of them, they just don't have exposure to what a jazz band is. They don't really know. I mean, they don't watch big bands and stuff like that. And so later on, when they're asked if they want to participate in it, they're like, I don't know, what's jazz band? And to have them actually see it at that concert, I bet that's a tremendous recruiting tool, especially for the jazz program, to have kids see that. I know when I first joined jazz band, it was the summer before my 7th grade year. No, it was the summer after my 7th grade year. And we at Verdigris, Yul Hanna, who was the director there, he would start like a summer jazz camp. And I remember going in trying to play 4th trumpet. And like, first of all, I can't read the music because it's some weird, like handwritten type thing instead of the nicely printed music I'm accustomed to. Yeah. And then second, like the rhythms are weird. Like I'm used to quarter notes, few eighth notes here and there. Like, I don't understand what all this stuff is. And then the other thing that I was very concerned about that Mr. Hanna hadn't fixed was everybody was playing eighth notes wrong. Like eighth notes are da, 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 and nobody was playing them that way. And I like couldn't even get it. Like could not get it. But thank God for him that he got me exposed to it and eventually figured out some of it at least. So that's great. That's a great way to have exposure for those kids for that, to help recruit that. That's terrific. Well, this is cool, man. You guys, there's so many good ideas here and like, that's kind of what I've seen. And again, why I want to do this is I'm hearing that like so many people have at least one piece that they're doing well, you know, and there's some people that are doing a lot. And there's some people that maybe could do more, but everyone's got some piece they're doing that's effective. Mm-hmm. And I think the programs that are going to continue to thrive after this are going to be the ones that are trying to figure out, hey, what can we do more? Mm-hmm. The one big takeaway that I've heard consistently through all this is the programs that continuously have the highest enrollment and recruitment. They think of recruitment and retention as being, you know, two sides of the same coin, and then they're always recruiting. And definitely, I mean, gosh, listen to the Carthage episode when it's up. Listen to Tim Carth's episode, which is up now. And Tim goes through some of the things that he does. And he's like, I mean, he starts recruiting those kids in kindergarten. And so by the time it's time for band, they know who he is. They know about band. Like they are ready for band. They've been hearing about band for years. And I just thought that was so smart. You know, I never had that. I saw the video for band in 5th grade and signed up but you know, I think now it's a more challenging era than it was in 1984 or 6 or whenever it was that I started. 85. I started band in 85. So kids have a few more choices. We didn't have high-speed internet back then. So
yeah.
Anyway.